Hey guys, this is CK at CK Education, and today I want to expose, if it's not obvious to you guys already, videos out there, and I've seen a lot of these where they say things like, it's basically clickbait scams. It'll say something like how to get a perfect SAT reading score, or how to get a perfect SAT score, or something like this. And when you click on it, the person on the video will say something like, well, one of my students got a perfect reading score, and then what you got to do is you have to read these magazines, and you have to know these vocab words, and you have to know, read these articles and these kinds of books, and blah, blah. And the more you listen, you're like, so if I do all those things, will I get a perfect reading score or a perfect SAT score? The answer is, of course, no, you won't, or you're not very likely to. And if you are going to get a perfect score, because I've had many students get perfect scores in either sections, you don't have to read all those books or all those articles or all those, know all those vocab words, or you have to know all these, Greek and Latin roots and things like that. That is all hype, okay? It is. So when you see something like that, and I purposely, say how to get the perfect SAT score, but I put a question mark. Look, these are all scams. It's just clickbait for you to click and then you watch it, but there's really nothing of substance there. Let's talk about a perfect SAT score. A perfect SAT score is 1600, 800 in math and 800 in reading and writing. I've had plenty of students who've gotten 800 in math. That seems like an easier thing to do. Now, to get an 800 in math, you have to get 0 wrong. The curve on the math is usually unforgiving. And so unless you get 0 wrong, you're not going to get an 800. Now, you get 1 wrong in math, what happens? I've seen as high as 790. That's a great curve that day. I've seen 780. You miss 1 and get a 780. I've seen you miss 1 and get a 770. Okay. So just because someone gets 770, is that different than a 790? No, they both miss 1, right? And this is why the curve exists. And let me just talk about the curve for a second. The curve is not what most people think. It's not like, determined by what kids get that day on that particular test. The curve has already been created ahead of time by College Board. How do they create it? Well, they know how many 1 to 5 difficulty level problems there are on any given test. Every problem has a difficulty level rank. 1 is easiest and 5 is most difficult. And depending on how many of those there are in any given test, they already set the curve before anybody takes the test. So I've heard so many times, in the last many years, people have said this to me, they asked me about it. It is not like what you guys think where, if a lot of, seniors take it, they're probably going to do better. So it's going to, sway the curve. This curve doesn't get swayed. It's predetermined. So just understand that. As far as a perfect score, like I said, 800 in math, had a lot of students get 800 in math, had fewer students get 800 in reading and writing. Now, you can get an 800 in reading and writing, maybe if you miss 1, maybe, it just depends on the curve. But again, the higher you get and the less you miss, the more they dock. The more, like if you miss 15 in a section versus missing 17, you're probably not going to see a very big difference in score. But if you miss 3 versus missing 1 on any given section, you're going to see a bigger increase. So the scale is not linear. Okay, it is definitely not linear. But as far as perfect score is concerned, how do you get a perfect score? My answer is you can't. You're probably not going to. I've never had yet, and I've had nearly 1,000 students, and some of them were brilliant, okay? I've never had yet a kid get a 1,600 on any given test. It is very difficult to get 1,600. Now, I'm sure at some point one of my students might, but that's not to say I haven't had students who've got, let's say, just recently, just right now, as of this recording, what's today, October 21st? October 21st. So on the October 2020 test, the test that was, given this earlier this month, one of my kids got 1580. He missed 1 on the entire test. And I've had many kids who've gotten that kind of score. So it's not even important that you get a 1600, first of all. Okay, that's just really to show off. But I always tell kids, look, if you get 1550 or above, you're all pretty much in the same level, okay? Because there is that little curve there. Okay, but a perfect score, you get 800 in math, you get 800 reading and writing. Very difficult to do both of those because one little careless error and you're down to a 1580 sometimes, you know. So to get 0 wrong on the entire test, that's incredibly difficult. And it's not important that you do that. But when someone says how to get a perfect score, I'm like, you can't tell someone how to get a perfect score. Even if you do all the things that they tell you in the video, you're still not going to get a perfect score. Like I got students who, for example, whom I know, they will never get above a 650 on the reading and writing section. They're just never going to, you know, because they're starting out at like 450. Okay, and for them, if they go from a 450 to a 650, that's a 200-point increase in just the reading and writing section. That's huge. But they're not going to get an 800 in reading and writing. That's not going to happen. I'm not trying to be pessimistic. I am very realistic. In fact, I'm optimistic with all of my students, and I want them to do well. But I'm not here to hype anything, okay? But I have told kids, on the other hand, who thought, you know, even some of my students right now, they say, well, you know, I hope I can get 1500. I said, oh, you're going to get 1550 or above. I think you can get 1550 or above. And I have several students right now who are my students like that. So, you know, I'm not trying to hype it this way or that way. I try to be very realistic with my students. But when you see something like that, how to get a perfect, don't even click there. I mean, that's a scam. It's the same thing as when you see a YouTube video on how to become a millionaire in 5 easy steps or something like that. It's not going to happen, okay? How to become a multimillionaire real estate investor in whatever. Not going to happen, okay? These are hype, these are scams, these are clickbait. It's for you to click on it, and then all you're going to do is get disappointed. Here's what I know. You have to do the right things, you have to learn the right things, the right methods, and you have to master those things over a period of time, and that will maximize your chances of getting a very high score. And when I say high score, I mean, it depends on where you started. If you're starting out at 1050 on the SAT, I'm not expecting you to get 1550. Okay, but if you start out at 1450, there's a much better chance, isn't there? And it's not to say that a kid starting out at 1250 can't get 1500. I've had kids do that. It surprised me. But generally speaking, it's more about the improvement, not the absolute score necessarily. So understand that someone who starts out as, you know, at a certain level, it's just going to take more work and take a longer period of time to reach that same level, you know, compared to a student who starts here. You know, this is a logical assessment, right? So you just have to be realistic about that. But I tell students all the time, it doesn't matter where you start, it only matters where you end up. And any students who works hard to master the things that I teach them, they'll get big score increases, period. Okay? But the problem is, a lot of times they won't. If they don't master it, then they're not going to get the results. You can't not do the work. You can't not do what is required and then expect results. That's unreasonable, okay? But I just wanted to share this today because I see a lot of these kinds of videos, how to get a perfect this and how to get a perfect that, or how I got a perfect this. Those don't really help you. You are not those people, okay? There are some kids who don't study SAT at all. They might just skim over a book one time, like a college prep book, and then they'll just, you know, they'll go take the test and they'll get like 1580. You know, you always hear stories like that. Man, that guy didn't even study. He got like 1580. But you're not that kid. I'm not that kid. Most of us aren't that person. So we can't expect to do what that person did, right? So let that be their story. For the rest of us, people, we have to usually work very, very hard, okay? And we have to learn the right things, the right methods. We have to practice those until we master them, and then we get to a level where we can do very well. And that's usually how most things work in life. So I just wanted to share that with you today. So I hope you found that helpful. And until my next video, stay well.